Hi, Money Magicians. Welcome to another episode of the Money Magic series. My guest with me today is Nomveliso. Nomveliso was actually one of the first ever Money Magic students. So if you've just joined us, the Money Magic series is where I invite Money Magic students and my private clients to come talk about ancestral money trauma and their money journeys. And at first I thought I was going to do like a few episodes. It just keeps growing. At first it was like because people were sending me emails, don't stop this. And now I'll be honest, I'm doing it because I enjoy it. So welcome, Nomveliso.
Hi, Vangile.
Thank you for joining us. So please tell us who you are and what you do.
Okay, so I'm learning a lot about invisibility from the course this week. So I'm gonna describe myself in a visible way and not showing away. So I'm the
Please.
owner and founder of a business called Mayine Development Institute. It's one of the unique businesses in the coaching space because I coach teenagers and I coach preteens and young adults and now families. So it's
Yeah.
one of its kind in the country, in fact, in the continent, because
Yeah.
we follow an African-centered approach to our coaching. So I'm the founder, I'm the CEO, and I'm one of the big people that's going to come out of this space in Africa.
Yeah, no, I love it, right? So
Yes.
before we go any further, I am
Yes.
so like, Namveli, so your work intrigues me, and I think it intrigues lots of people. So I just
Yes.
want us to go a little deeper into this because your work is multi-pronged, especially
Yes.
for African people. So I want
Yes.
us to just touch a little bit on that because it ties into family trauma and teen
Yes.
trauma. So you
Yes.
started, you've actually trademarked the Teen Coach brand,
Yes.
and now
Yes.
you have teen coaches that work under you. What
Yes.
do those teen coaches do? Why is teen
Um,
coaching so important?
In fact, the teen coaches don't work under me per se. They're just affiliated to us in terms of the code of
Mm,
ethics, but they work for themselves. They run their
yeah.
own practices and then they keep their own money.
Ah,
But for ethics purposes, everyone is still links to our business so that we all follow the same ethical code because working with minors, especially in our country, in Africa, where minors are under siege in terms of people always pick on minors, especially those that work with kids. So we thought for safety purposes, all the teen coaches need to have an umbrella where they belong to for ethics purposes. So what teen coaching is it's life coaching, but for teenagers and for preteens, mainly because I realized okay, I've been doing this for more than 25, 28 years. And while I was working with adults for the longest time, I realized their issues came from their childhood. I then thought if we intervene at the childhood stage, we then are able to mitigate any future wounds or their internal wounds expanding more than they should in terms of when they're
yeah,
adults. So I then thought,
yeah.
okay, I need a concept that's going to intervene at preteen and teenagers so that when they become young adults, they are much more better emotionally than some of us were when we were young adults and adults. So then I
Yeah.
created teen coaching, trademarked it as a concept, legally it's trademarked, and then I've been running that as an umbrella. So the formalized part of it, this thing up, it's almost 6 years now, but in the
Yeah.
space of working with teenagers, I've been in this field. In fact, I was born into it,
Yeah.
and that's why it was important to me. The other thing is that I realized that psychologically, in the psychological space, there's a lot of Western methodologies that are being used on us
Yes.
that are not working. You'd find that because they are not working, they then tend to medicate our kids because no one
Yes.
understood how to handle the psyche of a black child. So in
Yeah.
that misunderstanding, you'd find that when they don't know how to handle us, they recommend medication. And what medication does, it dumbs us down and slows us down, and therefore we are less of a problem to those that are working with us. And what people
Yeah.
don't understand, though, is that in the long run, that medicating for years has its own after effects, which
Yes.
almost feed into something else as well. So I
Whew.
wanted to close the gap because I understood that most of our emotional wounds are from childhood, and also
Yeah.
they're from family traumas as well.
Yes, wow. I love that you spoke about that. You know, I've been very reluctant to talk about like how Black people have different type of traumas. Or maybe I've not been reluctant when I think about it. I do talk
No,
a lot
you
about it. Okay, let's like
haven't.
I feel like I'm a lot like my brother said something to me a few days ago. He said, I'm a man of little words. And I remember thinking, what the hell is it talking about? So sometimes we have this view of ourselves, which is so not true. You know,
Yes.
my brother has kept me on the phone for 8 hours straight. So a man of little words is definitely not him, right? But
Mm.
let's talk about how Black trauma, especially with children, is different from white trauma. What do you think are some of the causes of that? And I'm just thinking, wow, there's just so much, you know, that we don't even realize that. I think that if you go to, when I went to just traditional therapy, a
Yes.
lot of things didn't help me. Like I got help, but then the same issues came up way, way later,
Mm.
which is why I started ancestral trauma work.
Mm.
So can you tell us a little about that and how you sometimes see these unique traumas play out with teens and how they are misdiagnosed because of Western modalities?
It's quite broad. I'm trying to think of an example from my work.
Yeah.
It's quite broad. Um, so the way that Western psychology works is that they work with what you bring to them. For an
Yeah.
example, if you say that the child is failing at school, what they would then do is they would focus on the failing and what they can
Yes.
do to intervene in the failing part of it. And what
Yeah.
they don't consider is the fact that a lot of things, because Tina, we know in the African culture, Ukuti, every tree has its roots, and those
Yes.
roots then feed into the entire tree. So the way that we work on our side is to say, okay, we see that the fruits of this tree are not producing well or are not growing properly. So what are we feeding the roots? What has been feeding these roots? So this is what we do in the African context side of things, is we look at the root causes, and then those root causes, once we feed them or we unpack them, then we're able to see a child produce different results. Whereas in a Western approach, they mostly look at what's brought in front of them. And when I asked a psychologist this, they said it's difficult for them to look at the root causes because of the guiding rules around psychology and around what is they're expected to do.
Yeah.
Whereas being African is it's not very complex, it's just unique, because
Yeah.
what makes us who we are is not just us only, it's the community that we're coming from, it's the
Yes.
family that we're coming from, it's the history that we're coming from. So we have our individual history, but there's a collective history that feeds into us, be it we agree to it or not. Hence you'd
Yeah.
hear Abantu say, umntu ngumntu ngabantu, we are
Yeah.
because of other people, or you'd hear Africans say, it takes a village to raise a child. And people assume that we take this child into a village, which is not true. The fact that you are existing as a human person, there's a village around you, be it you invited or not. So in
Yeah.
the teen space, when a child goes into a school, the school becomes the village. Be it they have friends that they go to or not, there will be people that come to that particular child, be it they are good friends or not. And those people then form the village that this child belongs
Yeah.
to. So in spaces, at school where teens are involved, you find that if a child is struggling at school, maybe they're being bullied, a lot of people assume it's because they're new in this environment, whereas you'd find that a child has not built enough confidence for them to be able to sustain external pressure, or you'd find that where the child is coming from, home-based
Sure.
wise, there isn't enough validation and care and guidance and support that is enough for this child to go out there and be able to stomach issues when they come up. So when we work with teens, then it becomes impossible to just look at the one element that they bring to
Yeah.
you. You have to look at it and say what else fits into this child, and that's what
Yeah.
makes us different,
Yeah.
because we come from a different type of uniqueness.
Yeah, actually, as you're talking, I remember when I was in seeing a psychologist and a counselor in high school, I enrolled myself, right? At first, they tried to work with me as just the individual, right?
Yes.
And then,
Yes.
like, at some point, they brought my mother in, they brought my uncle in, and then they'd bring my dad in. But what they weren't, what my psychologist at the time was not realizing was that, like, yes, I was coming in every week, but things were not radically shifting within me because I was going home to a unit with its own
Yes.
traumas, you know?
Yes.
So a
Yes.
lot of things I was like being healed in the space, but there was this whole other unit, which was not made up of my mom and my uncle and my dad, but was made up of grandmothers, was made up of aunts, was made up of cousins, and all these people were
Mm,
contributing to my trauma, you
mm,
know? So I love what you do, because the other thing that you do is you do family dynamics work. Can
yes.
you please talk to us about that? Because I think most people don't understand. They think, "Ah, I'll just send the child to camp,
Mm.
to teen camps, and I'll just continue being this toxic human and continue." Like, seriously, I saw it
Yeah.
growing up.
Yeah.
It's like,
Uh,
it's that child's issue. But the thing is that
yeah.
this is a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old. So you also do family dynamics work. What is that, and why is it so important?
In fact, family dynamics is the core of my work. It's the
Yeah,
biggest element of it, because if a child is not doing well at school, I often check first family dynamics and see what's happening there.
sure.
Um, so the reason why it's important, I'll make an example. There was a teen where I was working with. When they came to me, the child was smoking, doing drugs, smoking weed, drugs, and a whole mix of things. Also highly violent at home, um, attacking
Sure.
parents and everything else at home. And he was 15 years of age, so he was still quite young.
Yeah.
So the first thing then I had to, usually when people bring kids to me, they say this child is a problem. Kudala Singshaya, we've been beating this child up for a couple of times and it's not working.
Yeah.
And so parents are used to beating up the child, not realizing actually the child is responding to something that is happening at home. So in this case,
Mm,
the child wasn't told who the biological father is, and the child
sure.
and the child had been dreaming about this biological father for years, ever since he was 8 years
Sure.
of age. So he'd been dreaming about this person. And then
Wow.
there was another person at home who's called the father. And this child was aware, there's a person that I'm dreaming about that says he's my father, or that looks or
Sure.
feels like he's my father.
I've
And
got
and
goosebumps because you talk a lot
yes,
about this, about how Black children, again, that comes back to some of the things that are very unique to us. It's also these
yes,
deep spiritual gifts that we
yes,
walk with.
yes,
So
yes.
even lying to Black children is a
It,
difficult one.
it's difficult. So then this child, from 8 years of age, and the dreams he was having was very vivid in terms of how this person looks,
Sure.
hairstyle, how they dresses, and the car they were driving, and he's
Oh,
never met this person before. And then fast forward when he was 14 years of age, mom gets married to the guy, to the person, that boyfriend, then his stepdad, and then this child knows as the stepdad as the biological dad. And then one day the person in the dream rocks up in the house, and the boy is the one that opens the door. And when he opens the door, the person is exactly as he has seen him along the years, and he's never met this person before. And this is a true story, guys. This is a true story. And now the person who's coming, which is the biological father, was the one who was not wise, because he's been absent all along, what he then did was to introduce himself as the father, and then began to let out his anger about the mom on the child. And that anger then, because what then he did was to immediately go to court to get custody of this child. So imagine you've been away 14 years and now you take this child to court, and then you badmouth the mom. And then it became messy, and that's what brought the anger from the child. And the anger is multifaceted. The boy was angry at the mom for not telling him the truth. At the stepdad for not being honest, at the grandparents for also hiding all of this, and he was angry at everyone. So when he came to me, they did not know that he's known about this thing all along through the dreams. He never told anyone until he came to see me. And when he told me, it was like, no, man, this is the reason that, and then this is how it played out. So you see how family dynamics play out. Now, when you have a teenager at home, you have this teen that swears at everybody else in the house, and you don't know why. You have this teen that's fighting everyone, and you think this child is rude, this child is lazy, this child doesn't respect us, doesn't honor everything in us, and you don't know why. You think that's the reason, whereas there's a much more deeper situation that's happening, and you are the cause of it. The big part is that you are the cause of it. So if anyone needs to be beaten up,
and then on top of that, you beat this child.
Yes. So whoever needs beating actually is you, the grown-ups, and not this child. And also, one of the things I'm learning now is that the deep part of it is that and it's happening more and more so now. If the trauma in the family happened at 8 years of age, or 9 years of age, or 10 years of age of a child, the child stays there emotionally and doesn't grow.
That makes sense, actually.
Yes, the years grow, but emotionally and spiritually, the child doesn't grow. They stay in that stage. So for you to be able to assist this child, you need to allow them to grow and a space to grow. Which goes back to how this child is going to be parented. You know, the work we do with inner child then comes in here, in the sense that now the parents need to learn how to parent this child out of that stage to the next growth phase.
Yes. I think what I can say from what I know about trauma is that actually happens. It's maybe it happens a lot more at like 8 years and on, but I also know that it's like, I've noticed that at the age of 3 and 4, even 2, a child can stay there. So you're growing, but then like even as an adult, you're relationshiping as a 4-year-old, you're dealing with money as a 4-year-old, you're dealing with everything. So it's the same what you're saying. It's like the child is growing up, but the child is still 8. You have, and this is why we will look at certain things. I've been thinking a lot about how we go elokishini in the village, especially with young men. And we're like, but they don't move out of home. They still rely on their mothers because there's something that has happened that has kept them in that childlike state, you know? And I think what often happens with women is that our parents, even though we're still in that state, we are being forced out of the nest. So we have to grow, right? And even then we look grown, but we're not. We're still operating from the state. And that comes because of trauma. Because we're not able to process the trauma, so we stay in that state. Wow, Nomvi. So I'm just very interested, like, maybe other people are also thinking this, because I'm thinking this and I don't really know, right? Is that, so do you bring the entire family together then? And then do you work with them individually? Do you do group work with them?
So the interesting part about my work is that it unfolds in stages. I'm learning that now. So initially, when I first began, I would work with the kids only and then give feedback to the parents. Because at that stage, back in the days, I didn't have methodologies that had unlocked, because we live in a life that unlocks these teaching and lessons for us as we grow also, as individuals and as coaches, because we also go through our own emotional growth, we also go through our own spiritual growth. So initially I would work with the teenagers and then give feedback to the parents so that they know. And then I guess when I was giving feedback to the parents, my understanding is that they would then go to psychologists and maybe then have their own way of dealing with things through psychologists. And then I realized psychologists don't know what to do. So they would refer them back to me in a weird way. Because they don't know what to do. They've never met some of these issues before, so they don't know how to tackle them. So now I then realized, okay, so I need to have other teen coaches that deal with the teenagers so that I can move more into family work, because it's quite complex. It requires a high level of maturity. It requires a high level of emotional growth. It requires a high level of presence. And therefore I thought, okay, let me train other teen coaches so that in the market they can take care of the teens, and then I will deal with their parents, because some of their issues, it's difficult for parents, because parents have grown. We are also very self-defensive. We defend ourselves with everything that we have, which slows down growth. Also, we run away from facing up ourselves, our own issues. We run away from doing that. And also when we are afraid of coming across as failures. So anything that's going to point back to us, we feel judged without opening ourselves up for learning. And I understand, because we grow up in social media times where we see parents getting attacked all the time. So the first primary instinct that parents have is to hide and protect themselves. But what it doesn't do, though, it doesn't help the situation, because then when a child comes back home, they come back to the same trauma and we just replicate it all the time. So now what I do is I work with the teenager, and then I work with the parents. And now it's opening up to working with the broader family community, because there are certain things that are then linked to the broader community of the family. What I began to do last year, as an example, because I do camps for teenagers, we call them retreats for teenagers. And then while I was preparing for the retreats, I realized there were a lot of missing links, which often were linked to absent fathers. I then began asking for contact details of the absent fathers so that I can involve them in the conversation, realizing that because of my format of seeing the tree and checking out the roots, I needed to know what else fits into the situation. Then I'll have conversations with absent fathers. Then that has now grown to including the whole family into the coaching space, because there's a need for it. We term it family reconciliation, but sometimes English throws these things out. English is very limited in how we use this language, but it's similar to family reconciliation, because we've grown into this culture that cancels family, cancel. Whereas if your child is going through a particular problem, chances are they might need a conversation with their biological father. Even if me as a mom, I'm still angry at the biological father, who's my ex-boyfriend. So we need to get to a stage where, as the biological mom, I put aside my emotional issues with the ex-boyfriend and realize there's a part in this ex-boyfriend that is my child's father, and my child needs information so that he can be okay. And sometimes information is as simple as this child knowing how this man looks like for this child to be okay. And it could be as simple as this child knowing, am I like him? Like personality-wise, because personality-wise and also emotionally, in terms of character traits, am I like him? This becomes even much more deeper if the biological father is a gentleman jailbird, you'd find that it's quite common for teenagers to either find themselves up in jail, even if they've never met the father, but they heard somewhere,
Wow.
okay, the father is a jailbird. So it's very intricate. So
Wow.
so we call it in Xhosa, iyeza. The medicine that we use to heal that part is to introduce the child to the source, which might be the biological
Yeah.
father, so that the child can then have a space to define for himself, from having the full information who he wants to be, and not us biological moms deciding for them. Because Tina,
Yeah.
we assume, because we are the moms, we assume it starts and ends with us, when it
Sure.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Because Black humanity is very unique and very complex and very colorful.
It is,
Yes,
hey?
we involve family. Another example that speaks into a family setup is that, I'll say this because I'm working around that with my own family. There's certain information about my own family that are needed, which
Yeah.
I'm now finding from other members of the family community that I've never even met before, that I'm
Sure.
only meeting now. And that information that they have there is helping me to define myself. So the
Mm,
cancel culture might work in celebrity mode on social media, but when we bring it home to family, it doesn't work,
it
because the
really doesn't.
African Black community has certain I want to get English throws this one. Our families have certain heartbeats that are different
Yeah.
to other communities, and when
Yeah.
those hearts don't beat properly, that's when we talk about family trauma. Then, because it means
Yeah.
a lot of things have shifted, and we can't just name it family trauma and leave it there when we have to
Amen.
when
Yes.
we have to work on it. We have to challenge ourselves to work on it. And this is
Yes.
why,
Yes.
and mind you, this is just family dynamics, né? Without the money stories. We haven't even touched on how this plays out in the money space.
I
That becomes
know.
another
We're
dynamic
gonna
on
touch
its
on
own.
that actually. We're
So
gonna touch on that.
I'm just showing the dynamic, how broad it can be,
Yeah.
because it plays into the whole dynamic of who we are and how
Yeah.
we are impacted by things in a certain way as African community.
Yeah. So I know you and I just let's start to transition a little into the money thing. You and I
Yes.
actually had this really interesting conversation in the student group where we're talking about like how realizing how money is made in our families has been
Yes.
such a huge aha moment. So, guys, I was sharing with Nombeli so that I realized that, especially in my maternal line, people don't like to work hard. Hey, like in my maternal family line, it's like the minute people go into hard work drive, that's when everything goes crazy. So, like, I
Mm,
had to go on my own journey to understanding who are these ancestors? And I'm very lucky because I've got honey, right? But then I also just sat down and asked my mom questions. Who are these ancestors? And also, I've shared before in the interview with Polite, like the story of how my mom says I was. Like, I wouldn't move around, I wouldn't do a lot of things in the womb. I only did things when necessary. You could beat me, you could do whatever. Like, she would like tap my tummy, her tummy, nothing. Like, I would not bother letting people know that I existed. So that was also a big understanding for me to say, oh, there's one side of my family where ease is super critical in allowing money in, that actually this particular part of the bloodline, when we do too much, certain
mm,
things just go a little odd. So for some reason, I don't know why. But there are also families where we spoke about this, where it's like understanding the challenge within the family as well. It's like, okay, there are certain things within my family that I understood within the maternal line, which helped me see, okay, this may be the source of the trauma when money is concerned. So, how can someone, I guess my whole thing is like, you said you're going to look at some of these things within your family, within your bloodline, that family information. How can people collect that information and how do you deduce it? And how does it then how do you know how it's affecting you financially?
Let me see. So okay, so on my side of the work, it's one of the practical things we do when we look at family history, because it becomes a big part of who we are. So one of the simplest way of family history is the common family trees, where you build that up. And then once you've done the family tree, you then have okay, on my side everything is very practical. You get up and go meet
Yeah.
people and talk and have conversations. You
Nice.
pick up the phone and you have conversations with people.
Wow.
So in my case, I think I began mine at around 18 years of age. So my family has a lot of people that I was able to have conversations with, and we even have our family history, part of our family history from 4-5 generations down, if not 6 generations down.
Wow.
Mainly because I get up and go talk. People always think that everything's gonna come to you. It's not gonna come to you. You have to sometimes get up and go have conversations with individuals within your
And
family, so that
it's so important.
it's quite
Because
important. So
I'm
then
just thinking, sorry, continue, Nambi,
And then
sorry.
what then happens in my space, we then collect all of this family history and we sit down with it. And then once we have those bits of family history, we then look at your own individual history, which starts from conception, like you said, starts from conception.
Yeah.
So I would look at how you were conceived. I would look at your individual journey. And I would look at how your mom interacted with that, and then the first
Wow.
months of your existence, and then the first 8 years of your existence, and then we bring that in so that then we are able to look at what is there, what family traumas are there, besides family traumas, what positive things are there that you can capitalize on to build your life, and then what do you need to work on,
Yeah.
what do you need to let go of, and then so a lot of these things, it's not a one-day show, and I think that's the thing we need to keep educating with individuals, that you don't just work, because people always look at the money component of things. Well, oh, okay, so how much is your session? Oh, how much are you charging? Because they're thinking, I'm gonna sit in one session, then I'm gonna have everything unfolding.
And
But
how
it's
can
not
you?
true.
Because
It
you've
becomes
just
a
told
journey.
us about 5 or 6
Yes,
generations. That, like, I mean, that's
yes,
almost
definitely.
250 years worth of work and understanding.
Yes,
How are you going to do that in even 3,
you
4
can.
sessions, even 6 sessions? Like,
You
guys, this
can.
is centuries of work
Can't.
and
'Cause
understanding.
yes, because I began at 18 years of age, and I think I got the first calm that I've done a bit of the work when I was around 35 years of age, because
Sure.
my goal was to reach my 40s a lot more calm and more mature. I didn't want to have, I didn't want to have emotional issues at my old age. So I then began the work at 18 years of age.
Sure.
So once we put all of that information together, we then look at your individual history from birth, from conception to birth, first few years, first few months, who was there, how was their position in your life, and then you feed that into the first 8 years, where were you, what was happening, and then you then look at planting family traumas,
Sure.
positive things, who was there, who's here now, and then you create a profile for yourself that then helps you not only manage your own life, but also raise your kids proper using that as well. Because in my space, it then fits into what I call family formation, where you form your family in a particular way.
Yeah.
And then that fits into how you then raise your kids. It's what we call now ancient wisdom, because people often say there's no manual for parenting, but there was a way that Africans did parenting. There was a way. It might not be called a manual in English, but there was a way that Africans raised their kids. But when colonialism happened, a lot of our ways got looked down on as primitive, as not
Yes.
glamorous enough. So a lot of our ways got looked down quite a lot But
Yeah.
what then happened is when colonialism was happening, the state at that time brought in a lot of psychologists from Germany, from Australia, from the UK to come into our country during that phase of colonialism when they were introducing everything. So what those psychologists did was they positioned themselves in spaces like in the Eastern Cape, in KZN, and this is part of my research that I'm sharing with you.
Wow.
So getting a sneak
Wow.
preview. So they stationed themselves in KZN, in Eastern Cape. That's why you'd find that the biggest missionary schools were in the Eastern Cape and in
Yes.
KZN. What then they did was they looked at how we were living, how Africans were living. This makes me emotional because it's so deep. So they looked at how we were living. They wrote those things down, but they gave their own interpretation of how we were living. A wrong
Yes.
interpretation of it because they
Yes.
didn't understand the language. They didn't
Yeah.
understand why certain things were done. So they wrote things as they saw them, as they perceived them, and then they wrote those things into textbooks. And then
Yes.
that became how they dealt with us also, and how
Yeah.
they removed certain things from us. Hence, the Witchcraft Act was created. Not that it had anything to do with witchcraft, but because there were certain unique spiritual things
Practices.
that we
Yeah.
do that are
Like
highly
burying
misunderstood.
the umbilical cord in the yard so that a child always knows who they are and is
Yes, being
connected to the
grounded.
land.
Yes,
Ish,
yes, that's
we've
how we were
lost so
grounded.
much.
Yes. So then a lot of our ways then got looked down on, mainly because the colonialists didn't understand why we're doing these things, and also
Wow.
because our elders were very wise in not giving out everything. They were very,
Yeah.
very wise. They were not being secretive, but our elders knew that some of these things were very sacred, and they were not keen on giving out everything. But in
Yeah.
the absence of true definitions, the colonialists then attached their own meanings to things. And then you'd find that people are learning those things at different institutions these days, and they think it's a proper thing, and it's not. so there was a way that parenting was done in the Black community. There was a way that families were done. So now what the collective conscious is doing is, through ancient wisdom, is bringing those things back onto us so that we
Yeah.
can then unpack it and assist people to close the gap so that we're able to move then to the next phase or the next era of our conscious evolution, if you may call it that. So these things are important, and everything kind of links together in terms of then the family history, how you put it together, your own formation, and then also how you then raise your kids with that. And I
Yeah.
must say, this is not a one-day type of event where you go to an event and then I
Yeah.
talk and then I go. It's bigger than that. It requires time. It requires
No,
patience.
healing is not a 1 day type of event. It's not even a 3 month type of event. You need to give it time. Like that's what I'm always trying to say to people. Attending a live class, attending a master class, this is not healing. Having an aha moment. Healing
Yes.
is so much deeper than that. The aha moments, great. These are conscious moments and conscious things that are happening. But a lot of healing is so much deeper. Like I'm going to bring it back to the money because I was just remembering how, like, for me, I was sharing in the student group that I realized that having a job was never going to work for me. Like, and I couldn't explain it to anyone at the time, except that I had gone through my family tree on the paternal side. And I had seen that absolutely every one of my aunts and uncles, including my dad, has always worked for themselves. My cousins, too, they've always started businesses. My grandmothers, it was never something. So I was like, this is why it's so difficult for me to get a job. And then to keep it is even more difficult. Like I've had jobs pay me out before my contract is finished, and that would always baffle me. Why is it that people are willing to pay me like 500,000 Rand or more just so that I can just finish without me doing any work? you know? And I realized that one side is from the maternal line, right? With their ease and how they do things. And I think my maternal family still hasn't grasped it. But in my paternal line, I think people are just like, jobs are not our thing. But like, then I realized that no, what if I focus fully on the business? That there's something about business
Yes.
that runs within the paternal bloodline. And that's when like I started creating steady income, right? So understanding what it is that works within the family, it's like, it's not just about healing the family trauma. It's like, once you start examining where you come from, this is what ancestral healing is. It's not just what people think it's working with sangomas. It's like understanding whose are you, as Maya Angelou would say, right? It's like, where do you come from? What is your bloodline? What are the things that you could trace that are unique, personality wise, traits wise, and even monetary wise that you may be missing in your family? And I see it often, like my cousins that try jobs, wow, you know, and I'm always like, guys, maybe we need to work for ourselves, right? And I think this is so, so important to understand, because then you're like, oh, it's not about that I can't get a job. It's what is it? What are some of the gifts that are unique to my
Yes.
family bloodline?
Yes. In my case, very similar, very, very similar. I think we've spoken about this. So one of the key things that I picked up in my own family history was that I come from a family of teachers. Literally, my dad was a teacher, my mom was a teacher, my great grandfather was a teacher, my mom's, my father's siblings, two of them are teachers besides him. So even my great granddad has a school named after the family because he was that kind of a teacher. So I realized, one, there's something about teaching, but then because it's me, I realized it's not just about teaching in schools. We have a core unique way of conveying lessons and messages. So very unique with words, very unique in terms of how we make delivery. So I knew, so when I was growing up though, I didn't want to be a teacher because I saw a lot of teachers around me in my family. But then at that time I misunderstood. I thought teaching in terms of going to a school, whereas it was way more beyond that. So that was the one pillar that I used to build my business. Okay, I realized, oh, okay, so teaching comes naturally to me. So one of those things where even if I'm invited to give a talk or a conversation or a workshop, in the next hour, I'll definitely know how to do it. I remember in my old job, I had a very petty manager who would close off giving me briefs, thinking that I'm going to fail. And then he would tell me a brief 5 minutes before when there are CEOs around, hoping that I'm going to embarrass myself. He didn't know that was my strongest point. And then also I realized that businesses were a huge part of the family as well. And then I realized, because of these two things, I can stop looking for a job, because then it means I'm going to be okay. And then what I did was focus on building a business, and then focus on my content creation. Actually, you just reminded me now, because I've been wanting to focus more on content creation. Now I realize I'm on the right track. So thank you for that.
Right? Because it's the teaching.
Yes, so family history and knowing how to decode it also, because it can be one thing. I think what a lot of people tend to do, they tend to focus more on the negative that's been happening, or that's happening in the family. They forget to look at the positives. But also, I'm realizing not everyone might have the gift of knowing what to do with information once they have it. Once they have it. Because also it needs to be put into a particular context as well, and then linked together. Not everyone has that gift. Hence, it's important for a person to go to a coach, so that you are able to get assisted to put that information into context. It's also quite common for triggers to come up when you do family history, because whatever family traumas are there, they will be triggered. And if you don't know, or if you don't have support to manage the triggers, you're going to lose yourself because you're going to be caught in the triggers and forget the reason why you're doing stuff. So it's important when you're doing that inner work, we call it inner work, to have support. Have a support of a coach that's going to travel with you. What people do though in the country, and I must call it out, is they tend to want to go to 10 coaches for the same thing. There's nothing wrong with having a money coach and having a career coach and another different coach. But if you're going to go to 10 spiritual money
different
coaches,
money coaches,
then you're going to have lots of problems that you're going to be just, you'll be yes, more paying closer. You just, I don't know how to do it.
Because like all of us have different modalities of working, right? Yes. And you and I have had this conversation where I've said to you before that one of the interesting things that I've seen is that the clients that I work with, where we're just like, can we just work with ancestral money trauma? And they're just willing to go into the dark spaces and the money traumas and work through this. Then like, it's different. Their results I find are so much more faster in a way. It's not that the others don't get results, but it's like, because there's none of that added stuff versus the clients that I've had who have come through and they've been like, no, yes, I hear you on this trauma thing, but it goes against what you're saying. I don't even want to use this particular language because it will invite bad juju in. It goes against the law of attraction. I have people that say that, and I'm just like, trust me, this is, for us to heal, we need to use this exact languaging. If these are the words that were used in your family, we need to work with those words so that we can understand the ripple effect that these exact words have had. But because there's that fear, and then it's like, no, it goes against the entire law of attraction and it will invite bad energy. I should only use positive thinking. Then it's like, okay, then there's a bit of a limitation there. It's not to say that you can't have mantras, you can't have your positive thoughts. There's no harm in that. But that there is a way of working, that all coaches have different ways of working and neither of them are wrong. But if you're going to negate, if you're going to work with one coach and not want to use the full methodology because you are so scared because it contradicts with what you've learned from another coach, you may, as you say, be tying yourself up. You know, you may be working against yourself.
Yes,
so
definitely.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you've said. So I mean, yeah, like, wow. Yeah, for me, definitely, just like with you, like I had this aha moment with like, okay, my dad's family is into business. My mom's family is actually really, they have these brilliant minds where they can tie things together really, really fast. They can, like, I want to say almost because they healers, they can say, if this happens, this happens, this happens. Like they can see multiple possibilities from one action, you know? So, and that they used to be, and their background is healing. So I just think what I've done is just combine these two strengths to create a healing business. So this is the power, I think, of understanding this generational pattern, even around money. And I know it's not just about money. It can also be what we're doing now in my paternal family, the women, we have retreats because of the same kind of concept, we've realized that there's something around relationships and money and us. So we're trying to figure it out, and we've traced it back maybe 5-6 generations back with my grandmothers, you know, and we're able to see, oh, so everybody comes with a story. My aunts are like, yes, but this is how great grandmother was. This is how so-and-so was. And you know, she would tell us this is what would happen. And then we're like, but wow, how is it that a few generations later, we are all replicating the same kind of behavior and the same kind of trauma? Because this is ancestral trauma. This is how it's passed down. So, wow. So, Namvi, I'm going to ask you, let's start to move more into the money questions. What does money mean to you?
I think it changes. Then I think it changes. I think we do this in the money course. There are days when money is a lover that takes care of me and make sure that I'm well taken care of. And then there are days when money is just a close friend that just wants to make sure that I'm also covered in a lot of things. And right now, I think money is a co-parent. Because I have a little one, and his upkeep also sometimes depends on money. So, and the interesting thing is, I also grew up in I have a very huge Christian background. So I also grew up under that umbrella that says money is the root of all evil. So I think when I came into the wealth money course, that was one of the things that I had to interact with, so that I don't. The thing is, when you believe that money is evil, you won't want to keep money.
Amen.
And you won't want to have it, because then it's going to destroy your life. So it was, and also you won't want to do anything that's going to create more money for you, because why would you want to create more evil for yourself? So that was one of the things I had to debunk, so that I understand that money is life. And I guess that's what money is to me now. Money is life.
Yeah, whew. I love this. When did you start suspecting that your money story wasn't just about the money, that there was something more to this? And especially in your business, because so many people have come on these interviews, and even like everyone, I would say almost everyone references you, and they say, no, like we would watch Nomveliso and we would see that, no, man, this woman is running a business. The business keeps running. And then she would talk about wealthy money. So when did you start realizing that maybe there's more to this money thing and this business thing than just the practical stuff?
I remember I used to be a huge self-sabotager. And I remember, because I'm a student of life, I love reading up on things. I love getting information. So I would read up a lot about self-sabotage in trying to manage it, when I realized that almost everything that I do, I end up sabotaging myself. But not everything was working. I would read things, but I would just get stuck in the one place all the time. And then I came across, I don't know how I met you. I'm not sure that was from Labels Joe. Oh, Joe, yes. And then I then read about the term relationship with money, because that's the first, I think you were the first person that I've heard talk about money and relationship in the same sentence. I've never heard that before. That actually you could have, or you have a relationship with money. It's just that it might be a good one or a bad one. Then I looked at my own state. Then I realized, when it comes to money, so
you were saying,
so I realized that I was sabotaging a lot, self-sabotage. And I was reading up a lot on it, because I love reading and getting to the bottom of things. But I think the more I read about it, the more I realized that it's not changing anything. I just have information about self-sabotage. It's not changing anything. And then I heard you the first time speak about money and relationship in the same sentence. It was from you. And then I realized, oh, okay, so you could have a relationship with money, and it can be either good or bad. And then you mentioned something about, I think I read one of your blogs that time, because you were still starting out, but you had a lot of blog articles. So I read a lot of your blogs, and then I realized, oh, actually, the reason why I'm sabotaging myself was because of a huge money trauma. And in my family, and that money trauma was linked to a person most dear to me at that time, even now. But at that time, I had not interacted with that story on the money side of things. And it was my dad. My dad had a mental breakdown, and it was when he was around 35, 36 years of age. He had just completed his degree, and he had just bought a huge house. And he had, I think, his money also, because he was now considered a lecturer, not just a teacher. And so we lost everything. He lost the house that he just bought for us. He lost his job, and he lost his mind as well, because he had a full mental breakdown. And then because of that, I had to drop out of school because we couldn't afford that anymore, tertiary. So a whole lot of money related things just came tumbling down. And then when I interacted with your blog and your some of the lessons, I realized that the reason why I'm sabotaging myself a lot is because I'm afraid of making money in case something similar happens to me that happened to my dad. And I realized that no amount of me reading about it is working or helping. So I needed to find another way of interacting with this so that I know how to break it off. And I think that was the first time that I was able to actually make that particular link. Then I realized, okay, this is how it affected me. And this is based on, I think, one of the meditations, the one about inner child meditations. Then I realized that that situation, because I was very close with my dad, still am, but I was much more closer than as a child because we were staying together, and I was also aware of how much money he was earning. So I was very close to his money story. So the self-sabotage was my inner child, or me trying to protect myself from accumulating more money in case when I have more money, I get embarrassed, I get humiliated. Because remember in those days when the bank takes the house, they come and do a huge show, and then also furniture shops also would do a huge show of coming with a huge truck to repossess the
Which is
furniture.
so traumatic.
So
Like, I
traumatic and so
always think that,
humiliating.
like when people are screaming in restaurants, the card is declined, or at
Yeah.
shops, or things like that. Guys, so much of what we do around money, even like the repossessing of homes, the repossessing of furniture, we do it in such a big and loud manner. It's almost like our entire society is intent on shaming us for not being able to afford financially. It hurts me.
Yes. So when that happened, I think then unknowingly I kept protecting myself from having money. And that would mean me not having enough money all the time. And then I think it was then through the course that I realized that this is a money trauma that I will not be able to just fix by just reading everything. Because that's the other thing that we do in social media. We follow Vangile, we read everything, and we think, I think I've got it now. I understand it.
I've
And then,
connected the dots, right? Because you could easily have said, no, I know what my story is. Because that's the thing. People think that knowing is healing, right?
it's not.
And it's so not. Like, I know my drama, guys. Trust and believe, because I do this work. And yet I still have coaches, because knowing my drama, knowing it fully, doesn't mean that I can just circumvent it. So I go into the course, I also do the work, because awareness doesn't lead to healing.
It doesn't. And I must also admit that I think it's human nature where we want to act like I am my only resource.
Yes.
Where we want to come across as if we are self-sufficient, and that we've got this, like we've got this. So I think I had to do a lot of inner work even after I have done a lot of inner work within the course, where I have to keep reminding myself that there are certain things that I will not be able to do myself, and that it is okay for me to receive help from another coach that knows more in this field that I do. And I'm saying this because I see this with other people now, and I used to do it as well, where we get to a space where we feel we're self-sufficient. I don't need, I'm okay. I'll figure this out on my own. And in most cases, it doesn't help. And what helped me was a language that is used in the villages, because I'm a village-born person, that says "Igqirha alikwazi ukuzinyanga," so meaning a healer doesn't heal themselves. So a healer needs to be healed. So there's a lot of self-healing that people do social media, which can be quite messy. So it's always best to go to the originator. That's the other thing. Because of social media, people replicate a lot of the content, but I've realized you have to go to the source, the originator of a particular healing modality, so that you don't allow people to play and test stuff on you.
And play and test stuff with trauma, guys. I
Trauma,
think
with
you and I have
trauma.
this conversation a lot, that sometimes people are playing and waddling around in
Yes.
trauma spaces,
And they get stuck in a
and then
bad
you
way.
get stuck and you re-traumatize someone, because some trauma, it may come across, oh, this is a small trauma. I'm just
Yes.
gonna, like, if we just do this, and like what I've often seen with people is how, like, there will be something that has happened, and then they'll work on the forgiveness modality and instantly try to get someone to go straight to forgiveness, and then be like, no, we've got them to forgive, etc. And then the day that comes up again, a trigger will happen that will just like, because the original trauma hasn't been dealt with. So often what we do is we think, we hear a snippet of what someone has said, right? And we like, no, I grasp it, I get it. And then we try to work on that, but it's just a snippet, and we don't understand what is the deeper thing that is driving that. You know, what does it actually mean? I've seen people do this when I've spoken about the God wound. The God wound has so many layers, and one of them just so happens, and it all shows up as the God wound, but it is so many layers. And like, one of them is just the issue with God, but that issue shows up with so many other things. It's got nothing to do with, it's not so much about the church and the pastor. You don't even have to be religious. So I've seen that, and I'm always like, don't do that, guys. Like, it's such a deeper wounding than what we're just discussing on the surface.
Yes.
So, wow. I really, really like that. So then you started doing the work, and this is where Busi and everyone was like, we don't know what this woman is doing. And you started to see shifts in your business. Can you please start, because you're literally one of the reasons why the Money Magic course has grown. So guys, let me just share the story with you guys. I had quit this work, quit the Money Magic course. Nomveliso hears about it. She's like, she wants to try the course. She tries the course. She sees so many benefits. And remember, I'm not even marketing the course. I'm not doing anything except with just a few clients that come through. Nomveliso offered to market this course. She shared her story with people. Before I knew it, like, this course was a thing, like Wealthy Money was a business again. So basically, Nomveliso dragged me from where I was living in South Korea back into the actual work. And I am always forever grateful for that, because she was just like, this work is incredible. You cannot give up on it. Let's do this. So please share, what are some of the shifts that you've seen over the years as you've been doing the work?
I think before I did the course, I was running retreats camp still, and I had lots of experience still in my work. But I think I was charging 950 for a retreat, a weekend retreat, 950 per child. And I couldn't understand. I'd be so exhausted. And mind you, 950 only covers accommodation and food, and that's it. And I would be so exhausted, and I couldn't understand. And also, that's the other thing that gets covered in the course, is that heart of wanting to serve all the time, and not charge people for it. And then, but I used to get so exhausted, and I didn't know why. And then when I went with the content of the course, I realized that I was really highly undercharging, mainly because I wanted my work to be reachable, but I wasn't taking into context my experience in the work and my energy in terms of all that goes into planning these retreats, the logistics, everything, the content, and me almost running everything from the first day up until the last day. And then I realized I was highly undercharging myself, and I was undercharging because I was scared of being rejected by the market, and I was undercharging because I was scared of making more money because I was just sabotaging myself. So the camps would fill up, but there wasn't anything to show for it. So then when I started working on self-sabotage and my family trauma around money, that's when I realized, okay, I need to honor the work that I'm doing. And this is all while doing the work. So it's not that I just woke up and said, okay, it was still doing the work. I did the spirit of money meditations, so that I understand where I was sitting with the whole money and relationship. And then I would do the inner child to review my stories around money and where it's coming from and everything else around it. I mean, there's so many layers to this, so many layers. So I'm the kind of person who always wants to be honest about my journey and where help is received. So that's why I would make a noise about the cost, because I think, guys, you guys cannot struggle when there's help here. So, and also because, and I value authenticity as well. So I wanted to be able to be authentic about my journey. So I increased the price of my retreats, but then and I was confident about it. But then the other thing came in after increasing, the fear kicked in because people started questioning my price, and because I wasn't strong emotionally, or because there was another layer that comes with being questioned about your pricing, then you'd get triggered, and then another layer of your family trauma, I mean your money trauma would come up. Then we had to run back to the cause. So I realized that it becomes impossible to just run the cause, to do the cause quietly on the side and hope that things are gonna work out. And then I realized, okay, I need to be vocal about every challenge I'm going through, because somehow when I'm more vocal in terms of sharing the gory details, the more I get insights, and the more things will change for me. So I started just writing openly about it. And also, I think by that time I had no shame attached to things. Like, I'm not ashamed. I wasn't ashamed that I had money problems. So I think shame.
I think, that's what shocked a lot of people. That's why people were like, what is this? Because you had no shame in a society that makes us feel like you're not making money in your business. You've got business issues, or you're working so hard in your business, but you're not making a profit. You should feel shame.
You should. And because, and funny enough, I don't think I ever told you this, because I shared so openly, some other group of women actually created a post on Facebook about how my business is not doing well, and why, a whole lot of encouraging things. So that's linked
I
to the
wonder what they're saying now when you like
I would love
training
to know too.
teen coaches and you're franchising.
So, but then I'm not, thankfully, because I work with teens, I'm not prone to peer pressure, because I've seen how it plays out with teenagers. But I must admit that you can't do the course in a quiet, isolated place. You need a tribe around to be around you, because a lot of the triggers will catch you unaware. It's quite common to have a one big trigger that will cause you to go running and hide and disappear for years. And then you come back, you're still in the same place that you still have to go fix that particular space. So I think what really helped me, just in short, it was being honest about my journey and about myself, and not make it about any other person, how they think, how they would view me. I didn't care about those things. I wanted to make money for myself, so I didn't care what other people thought about me. And so what helped was me interacting with the content. I think I read all of the articles in your blog, all of them. I even know where to find them. So, and then what I did was I read the book. I think the biggest trends though are in the meditations. I'm huge at meditating. So that helped quite a lot. So I increased my retreat fees, and then I got to a stage where I didn't care anymore who questioned me or not, because I then through the course, built the confidence of knowing that I'm really charging my worth now, and because of that, I'm not going to waver. And the more I was confident in that narrative of this is my work, this is how I'm going to honor myself, the more I attracted the right clients, because that's the other thing. Not everyone is your client, and you learn this through the course. Not everyone is your client, and you learn this from the course. I must emphasize, you learn this from the course. Not everyone is your client, and once you know who your client is, you're then able to speak to your client and ignore everybody else.
Amen. Because that's the thing. It's like I see people. This is the thing with, I'm sorry, Herbalife guys, right? But you guys give me so much fodder and thinking processes. I keep them to myself. But in these interviews, the Herbalife comes through. It's that shaming of people. Like we have this belief that your clients, everyone is your market. I remember when I started, there was a time I used to co-own a real estate agency in Boston, Massachusetts. And we would go to these trainings by a particular brand. It was under a franchise. And they would tell us that you have all these friends on Facebook. They are all your clients. This is how you're going to teach your agents to sell real estate, etc. And then it's like, actually, no. Now I realize that actually not everyone is your client. Don't get upset if people are not buying from you.
And just client. I don't want to forget this. So I don't want people to think this sounds too good to be true, or that your problems completely go away and you've got your bank account gets full all the time. There are days when I have nothing in my bank account. I must emphasize this. We call it bleeding money in the Wealthy Cost Money Magician group, because when you bleed money, so bleeding money means there's a situation where money just leaves out of your bank account, like because of emergencies, because of things you need to pay, because of a lot of things. So it does happen that there are phases when you don't have money, but when you start bleeding money, the next thing that we usually do is to find the source of the bleeds, which source you'd find in the inner work. So for an example, I'm bleeding money now, and the course teaches you why you might be bleeding money. So for an example, I know when I'm bleeding money, I need to go to the inner child. I've learned this through the course. I need to go to the inner child, and once I do the inner child, I then understand that in this particular week in my life, there is something that might be happening that is triggering my fear in money, and then that fear then triggers everything else, and it plays out in weird ways where you start paying for courses that you were not gonna use, like I did this week. Last week, I paid for this course, and I had now I'm realizing, why did I pay for that course? Then I realized, oh, there's something else, because I'm doing a lot of family work now here at home. So the money then is triggered. So every work that I'm doing is triggering the money side of things. So now,
every time going home is a guarantee for me to start bleeding money. It's like,
yes. And then now that I understand that, now I'm able to run to the meditations, and then I find the source, and then I deal with that source there, and then often things balance out. And sometimes bleeding money can play out in ways where you become lethargic, you don't feel like doing any work, and it plays out in different ways. So when my bank account is empty and I know there's something I might be running away from, and then the key is then for me to stop running is I need to go to a meditation. It does happen that we also run away from doing the inner work, because it can be quite deep sometimes, crying, emotions all over the place. So, but as long as we know where the source is, and then you're able to take your time and go to a meditation. What I've also learned along the years is that when I don't do inner work, nothing shifts and nothing changes. It's true doing the inner. In fact, I end up delaying myself when I don't do the inner work. It just delays you. It delays your money.
it's like I always see people that say, well, I'll start doing the work when something shifts. And it's always been such a thing for me, because it's like, and then sometimes what often happens is that those same people will come back to me 2 years later and they'll be complaining about the same issue
Same
2 years
issue.
later. And
Same
it's
issue.
like,
It's the same.
no, because it had nothing to do with you hear me talking about something and then you're like, no, I've got it. But maybe it's about something completely different. The same issue that causes me to bleed money may not be the same issue that causes Nomveliso to bleed money.
Yes.
Often it is not, it's like completely different.
The other thing I've noticed students make the mistake of, I can say this because I'm an older student, make a mistake of is just talking about the issue that's making everyone bleed money. It doesn't help, because you can talk about it, but if you're not going back into your closet to do the inner work and the meditations, then nothing is going to shift. Just writing about it alone doesn't help. You end up having the story. And that it becomes the story. And if people are not careful, it can almost become your story. Where this is how you are known. You are this person with this story, because you talk about it when you get triggered, but you don't do the work that goes with it to remove the triggers completely and altogether. So that's the difference.
Ooh,
so
what you
in,
just
in
said
my
there,
case,
ne?
so in my case, I've experienced the most shifts from not just talking, but doing the inner work. So sometimes I could end up doing the inner work and not talking, and I would get the shift. But sometimes I would need to do the inner work and the talking, and then I get the shifts. So each time when I see a person say, "Oh, I'm struggling with paying for the course, I think I'm going to leave," I wish I could say, "Don't," because that thinking plus that challenge is giving you a flag that says work on this, so that you're able to transpose over it, because it's there for a reason. So I've realized that there are no coincidences in the money space, and also most things can be worked on. Yes, human nature comes in when we run away from facing things, and that's okay. But if you're going to spend 2 years running away, you're delaying yourself more than anything else.
And seriously, hey, like I think of, wow, like I think some things have been so painful for us, like I've seen students deal with some crazy painful things. But like when they look back a year later, 2 years later, it's like where they are, it's like night and day. Debts have been paid, businesses have grown, all sorts of things. So I think that, the work is painful, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. Right now, for the last 2 weeks, this is my second week, I'm doing what Nomvi is saying. I've spoken about the God wound that was triggered for me in a meditation. I've been running for the last 10 days, running, not wanting to do that meditation, because I'm like, I refuse, but I'm going to go there and know the shifts will be incredible.
Can I say something before I forget? So the other thing that I wanted to link is around expansion. So when I began my work, I was charging $350 for a coaching session, and this was about 5 years ago. $350 for a coaching. It was about 5 years ago. Just so people understand, because I want to talk numbers now. Let's go to the numbers. So I was charging $350 for a coaching session. That was 5 years ago. Currently, I'm charging 1.3 for a coaching session. For a minimum of 90 minutes for a coaching session. So the difference between 350 and 1.3, and chances I'm going to increase my pricing for next year, because the work keeps growing in deep way. And then for retreats, I was charging $950. 5 years ago. I'm now charging 3.8 for a retreat. Going to increase as well as the time goes, because of the depth that is almost coming into the space now. So those are the numbers. So people often assume then you should not have money challenges. But what people forget is that a business has to grow. So besides the day-to-day logistics, I have a bigger vision for my business. And the bigger that vision goes, we then talk about expansion. This is the language within the course as well. So when we talk about expansion, now we are talking beyond the usual numbers that we use to. I'll make an example. There's a company that I work with as a consultant now and then. I've been with them for the past 10 years now. So they've been doing a study in the continent about entrepreneurship, and there's a term that they use. They talk about high impact entrepreneurs. Your high impact entrepreneurs are the type of entrepreneurs. I'll make an example. Your big retail stores that are able to have, say, 10 or 15 stores in one area, or 100 or 200. So those are high impact entrepreneurs. So a study was done a couple of years ago that says a lot of Black people don't get to that state of being high entrepreneurs easily, because of our history as a country, because of colonialism and apartheid that close off opportunities from us. So it's difficult for your Black entrepreneurs to be high scale, high impact entrepreneurs. So that's our history. So because of that history, when someone like me wants to then become an high impact entrepreneurs, new triggers come up. And those new triggers could easily be as when I bani in a business.
Exactly. But people say that all the time. You know how many people would say to me, hey, but you dream, hey?
Yes.
Like, guys, like,
yes, so
demoralizing.
Yes, so the biggest trigger. So now you can easily have a space where your account bleeds money because you're talking expansion. So one of my biggest challenges for me is having a team, a strong team. You know, Bangila, I've been talking about this, mainly because one of my biggest roles for expansion is a strong team to take me through the expansion phase. So then that is my challenge. And also there's this history that I'm tapping into, that who have you ever seen who is Black running a high growth coaching business that is not accredited via ICF, because when you're refusing these Western things, who have you seen? So that's the record playing in my head. So how it plays out is that each time I try and secure a team, money bleeds in a horrible way.
Yes, because your inner child is trying to protect you from the disappointment, from all the other things. So it has to she has to get rid of money in other ways.
In other ways. And now you're coaching me now, because now you're just giving me something else to work on. So I've been realizing this week, each time I try and secure a team, I always bleed money. So what it does is it proves to the ones that I'm trying to get on board to go to this business is not functioning, because then how is she going to pay for us? It also creates a story that says you have no money to pay a team, and therefore there won't be any space for you to grow your business, because like, when do you see that money to pay for your team here? And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy then, because of this story, and that's when people kind of lose it, because there's a difference when you're starting out within the course itself, and when you're on expansion mode. Expansion comes with it brings on the giants of money trauma that you have to work on.
It does, hey?
On the giant, and it's quite easy for a person to want to run the opposite direction, because then what's the point? Because if you're not bleeding money, you create emergencies all the time. Money comes in, like in my case, this year alone, I had a certain income goal that was going to lead straight to expansion, like camps in different regions. And I think thanks to COVID, I think I lost almost 600,000 rands, which was projected income just for this year alone. And it's easy to look at that money and also continue to bleed more because you didn't reach your goal. Except you can also decide to stay put and stay in the presence of mind until COVID is over, because what then happened is that what I did was to stay the course in terms of content-wise on Facebook, on marketing, so that I stay there and the created content there. didn't mean I wasn't bleeding. I was still bleeding more, but the difference now is that thanks to whatever was happening this year, now people know more about what I do. More people
Yes.
actually know more about it. People are now more,
Yes.
the only thing that I'm battling with now is overwhelm, which is another trigger, because now there's lots more
Yep.
people that want to know what I'm doing, and I don't have
Yeah.
the right tip for it as yet, because
Yeah.
that's my other trigger, another thing I
Yeah.
need to work on. And so now it's a
Yeah.
different type of expansion space that I'm at, but
Yeah.
the nice thing is that I know I can work on it. And that's
Yes.
because there are meditations that I can use to work on it. There's
Yeah.
journaling things I can do to work on it.
Yes. Wow. Namvi, you know what I love about you is that you are always so blatantly honest about the journey. You don't
Mm.
try to sugarcoat it. You're always so honest about it. And I appreciate that so much. So,
Thank
yeah, as
you.
I'm listening to you, I'm like, yeah, people don't understand. I keep saying expansion has its own unique issues.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it has its like own unique dramas because suddenly it's like you go from this many people to that many people. And
Yes.
then the bigger thing is also, can you service those people? How do
Yes.
you treadle expansion? All these things.
Mm.
But I love that you took that opportunity. And I think this is where the work comes in, right? It's that not everything is hunky dory. Same as
Yes.
you. I lost about, I don't know, 750,000 Rand from the retreats that I had planned. Because I had
Yes.
planned 3 retreats and people had
Mm.
already paid. I had to pay
Mm.
back most of that money, you know?
Mm.
So some people had already paid in full. So there were months
Mm.
where I was doing refunds of like 250,000 Rand just
Mm.
for
We call it
retreats.
bleeding.
Bleeding, you know, but like just like you, I went back and I did the work and other
Mm.
opportunities opened up. I was like, wait, I've got
Yeah.
other streams of income that I can focus on growing. And just like you, that has become the focus. And
Mm.
because that became the focus, things have just, I feel like I've actually grown. The
Yes.
business has grown faster than what I could have envisioned. But I think
Yes.
that without the work, when I'm truly honest, I would have lost my mind. You know, I would
Yes.
have panicked.
Exactly.
But for some reason, I was like, okay, I wrote down everyone's refunds, went to people and was like, okay, I can pay you in this month. I can pay you in
Yes,
this
I do
order.
that.
I iced down with it. You know, and it's just
Yes.
like just the calm of that and then following through on it and then continuing to build a business. That was not me before this work. And I
I
think
think,
that's the power of the work.
and it's that thing of having the right clients, because the right
Mm,
clients also don't give you, they know the kind of person that you are, and they're able to
yes.
move with you at any surprise that happens
Yes.
that's outside of your control. So that's the other beauty of
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. I want to, like, I really, really agree with that. I never thought of that. But yes, like, I think having the right clients, like, I think absolutely everyone that was coming to the retreats was the
Yes.
right client. They are a Money Magic student. They knew the story. They saw me when I was writing in the group about how
Mhm.
COVID was hitting the business. And like, just like you, I talk numbers, right? So
Yes.
I think that was super powerful. It just, and I will keep coming back to this, guys. You can sell to anyone and everything, and anyone. You can sell to anyone at any point. There's no problem with that. But selling, working with the right clients who are the right fit for you, that changes the game. It's just like working with a team that is the right fit for you. It changes the
Mm.
game. So, wow, we've come to the end of our interview. Namvi, how do people get hold of you? I know people are still reeling probably from the family dynamics conversation that we had. And I know that they may want to engage in your services. Guys, whatever you do, you may want to take this up. It is powerful, and Nomveliso is incredible with teenagers.
Mm. So I'm online. I think I stay on Facebook. So So if you search for teen coaching, Teencoach Nomveliso Mbanga, you'll find me. I have a page, and that page has my WhatsApp number and the email address. So I'm really easy to find. And so I'm always online. And I think the most important thing that I want to highlight about my work is that there's so much value in working with teenagers, né? Before they are older, because we know how there's a lot of stats around the high stats of numbers around depression in the country, and how those are sitting with adults within the workspace, and those adults are us, and mainly because a lot of our emotional traumas from our childhood are coming up when we are young adults, so 25 plus years and above. So there's a lot of value in allowing ourselves to get our teenagers and our preteens to handle their emotional traumas before they're grown. It also gives us a chance to work on ourselves too. I'll make an example. In all of our retreats, I ensure that parents are part of the interaction, as in the kids are the ones that attend the retreat alone, but we have a session afterwards for parents, so that parents understand what the teens are going through or are dealing with, so that they can then also work on their own things as a family. What I then find is to be a challenge, though, is that when adults realize that some of the issues are coming from them, they tend to run away, completely run away. And that doesn't
And it
help, though.
affects our children, hey?
It
Like,
doesn't help,
what
though,
is
because
that, guys?
it's fear. It's fear, and I guess it's self-judgment. I understand where it's coming from. It's self-judgment. So what I want to say, if you do decide on this path, make sure that you'll build the courage within yourself to stay the course. Ne? And I think this is one thing that I need to work with on my side, because people get stuck on how much they need to pay, and assume it's about just creating business when it's not. So sometimes I tend to then give people what they've paid for in terms of the retreat itself, and not probe them for follow-up sessions, because you don't want to come across as if you were just creating businesses for them. But it becomes crazy, though, when a parent comes back 3 years and 4 years later for the same issue that you had highlighted before, and then they never worked on it. So I'm going to say, be it you choose to work with me on teenagers and family dynamics, or be it you choose to work with Vangile on the money side of things, just stay the course. Stay the course, because staying the course is not just going to assist you, but your next generations in your family, because this work is generational as well. So whichever generation intercedes or intervenes, it helps to prepare the next generations in a much more better way, so that when we get to a certain era, your line and your bloodline has less issues to work with. And this is why we do this work. And in my case, why it's important to me is to ensure, because I have a child now, I'm very guarded about what happens within his space emotionally, because I don't want him to absorb any emotional traumas unnecessarily. So I'm very guarded about how I handle myself as well, and how I process my own emotional things on a day-to-day basis, because I don't want him, and I'm intentional about it, because we can't keep replicating some of the issues from the older generation. We have to be of a presence of mind, so that our kids have a different experience. So I'm very guarded about what goes into him and into his environment and into his space, because, and I guess that's why he's a happy child, because I'm very
I see that. He is such a happy child. I love what you've just said, though. Like, I think parents don't understand, and I've said this often before, that what I see with Black parents in particular, we think, I'll give the child the best education. In fact, I'll pay the most money to get them the school books, the best education. And then we wonder when a child gets into their 20s, why is this child with all this incredible education not able to succeed? Why are they not why are they not growing? Then we get really frustrated. When the truth is, the issue is not the education. It's that the traumas that this child is carrying are stopping them and blocking them from being able to grow career-wise. Or you find that a child is still stuck in a particular childhood stage because the traumas were never addressed. And also not just were they never addressed, but we were refusing to do our own healing work. So we have actually essentially blocked our own children from succeeding. And I think it's hard for us to admit that because we've been running from the work. You know, I see so many Black parents running from the work, but there's like this hope that our kids will do better, that their kids will do better, right? But the truth is, you are part of the issue. As you start to heal, you start to heal everybody else that comes after you.
Yeah.
So, wow. Thank you so much, Nomvi. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. If this resonated with you guys, please check out the Money Magic course. It's wealthy-money.com/money magic. Again, wealthy-money.com/money magic. In the course right now, we're doing a lot of work on creating an extra stream of income. So building your extra stream of income to at least the first income stream being 40,000 Rand or 2,500 US dollars. And we work a lot on ancestral money trauma, but I also want to encourage you guys, and I'm not just saying this for anything, but please check out Nomveliso's work. It's like, I was that teenager, like I said, that went to psychologists and counselors, and I wasn't getting I got help, but it was not the help that I feel would have made a big difference for me in my 20s. By the time I was 25, I was back to being suicidal and extremely depressed. The same issues from my teens popped up all over again. And I feel like if I had someone like Nomveliso on my side, it would have made a huge difference. So thank you, and do contact Nomveliso. Until next time, guys, I'll see you next week. Cheers.